Jay Stringer wrote a book called Unwanted. And in that book, he said something that I knew felt right and I knew would help, and I didn't really fully understand why, and this is shedding light on it. And he said, if you're going to pornography, treating yourself with a modicum of curiosity is going to be so much more helpful than shaming yourself.
Right.
And so this idea of leaning into what's going on here, that sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah. Totally.
Could you help us understand that? So if someone keeps returning to this sexual sin they feel deeply ashamed of,
right,
why might curiosity be a better approach and even a more pragmatic approach than just heaping shame on yourself?
Right. Because all that heaping shame is going to do is it's going to cause that part of you to retreat, maybe even like more into the unconscious mind or whatnot, where it's still going to be active in your system and it's still going to show up from time to time. It's still going to use the coping mechanisms that you have. So even if you're able to do some work with your more wounded child, even if you do some work, that part is still thinking, my only way to handle things when I'm overwhelmed or I'm stressed or I feel lonely or something is to turn to, say, pornography. And so if instead you connect with that part and you figure out, okay, the desire or the compulsion to look at pornography is rooted in a deep need for intimacy, in a deep sense that I can't get my intimacy needs met any other way than this way. And so you have to start by saying, okay, I understand that. I may not agree with that. Like, that's not where I want to stay, but I understand that what's going on there. And now all of a sudden I'm like, how can I help this part learn a new way to get your intimacy needs met? And as once you're doing that sort of deeper work with that part and the part realizes, no, you love, that part is loved, in fact. And your goal for that part is to actually get their needs met. Whereas if we just say, oh, just go cold turkey, just forget about it, like just put that away, just, stop that. Well, the part is going to be afraid, I'm never going to get my needs met. I'm going to have to like just, white knuckle it and just bear and suffer. But no, we want to offer so much more to our parts. And so we can by truly loving them and showing them a different way to meet one's intimacy needs. And also gaining trust with the parts. I know it sounds funny. You're talking about yourself, right? Your own self. But you have to gain trust from those parts before you can approach those wounded exiles that are carrying the shame and loneliness and pain. Because the protector parts, these firefighters and managers are protectors. They don't necessarily trust me, let's say, the self, to be able to handle it. Because maybe when the wounding happened, you were 5. And when you were 5, your inmost self was 5 and unable to handle the situation. But now, if you're an adult, you're able to possibly handle the situation just like you might for a friend. We can do it so easily for a friend, usually, like offer, true, like, hey, I want to help you and all this. And we somehow don't do that to ourselves. And that kind of gets us into the topic of self-love.
Wow. Could we just spend a bit more time on parts here? This is really fascinating stuff, and it definitely rings true. Why does it feel, it's not, but why does it feel to some more holy to shame that part? I imagine someone who's very hard on themselves hears you say, no, lean in, try to understand that part. Like, no, that's rubbish. That's just, that's soft talk. You need to yell at that thing. And
yeah, beautiful. That's a great question. And why? Because you just described a manager part. So the manager part is also protective and it's proactive. And a lot of us have, we call it a Catholic standard bearer part.
Okay.
And so that's a part that has learned its way of coping and managing is to be perhaps sometimes rigidly hold on to the truth of our faith and discipline of our faith. And hey, and that can be a good thing, right? Of course, it's a good thing to have strong beliefs and to have values and so on. But when that part is overwhelmed, right, or feels a threat to the system, or feels the overwhelm maybe of the shame or guilt that comes after, for example, binging on alcohol or looking at pornography or something, then that part moves in quickly to be like, to do the shaming, like you're saying, because it's trying to defend. It knows the answer to our problems is our faith. And so we have to uphold that. And it takes a kind of a rigid position. I see that as an important part when it's not burdened, right? But it's really a different thing to have a Catholic standard bearer part versus being connected with our inmost self, our true spiritual center that really represents the fact that we're image bearers of God. And so but together, when our core inmost self is engaged and leading our Catholic bearer part, right, and any other parts, now all of a sudden there's integration, right? And we can have better balance, right? We can be, we hold on to our values and our beliefs, and we do have standards and boundaries around that, and we can uphold those, but we're not shaming, and we're not, repressing other parts of the system. In fact, how great would it be for, instead of one part to shame another part of our own system, what would it be like for that to bring its wisdom and bring its knowledge of the faith to the part that's struggling, but to do it in a way that's compassionate? Kind of like you would do if you were a good evangelist, right? You don't go around meeting other people, right, who are struggling in sin and struggling in addiction. You don't go around just telling them, you're going to hell and you just stop that.
Right.
You wouldn't do that because it wouldn't work.
What's funny though is you see people do that in a way, and they kind of make a brand off of that, being hardcore, and maybe that is a sort of way to manage the chaos of the world at large. Not a particular person, but I go on my YouTube channel and I start breathing fire. I hold those God hates, what signs, that those folks were.
Well, here's another really key difference with our parts, and how you know the difference between some part that's active, or are you operating from that deeper inmost self, is that our parts have agendas. It's not always bad that they do, but they do. So as soon as you have a part, it has an agenda. And the agenda of the firefighter is just like, stop the pain. That's an easy one. But managers may have other kinds of agendas. Like, I want to feel good about myself, or I want to avoid criticism. Like a Catholic standard bearer part might be like, I want everybody around me to think I'm holy. That might be its agenda, right? Because otherwise, that's part of my identity, and otherwise, I feel I'm overwhelmed by a sense of I don't belong, or I'm not good enough, or something, right? So as soon as we detect an agenda, we know, okay, that's a part, and so we're going to approach that a little differently. Our core inmost self has no agenda other than perhaps healing and harmony. It really is just about loving. It's more of a pure loving essence, if you will. And so we know that that compassion just kind of flows. And in a way, once it's active, it kind of melts.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.